porn. Ed Meese was assigned to head up the anti-pornography crusade of the Reagan administration, which resulted in, among other things, a 2,000-page report, which was very poorly received because it did not appear to be at all based on any empirical evidence. Nevertheless, Attorney General Meese formed what he called an obscenity strike force inside federal law enforcement. He then led the Justice Department to prioritize new and creative means of bringing prosecutions to try to blot out and eliminate the scourge of pornography from America. And while that must have been exhausting, Ed Meese also became sort of the animating legal force in the Reagan administration behind the Iran-Contra scandal. Someday somebody will make an amazing blockbuster movie about how astonishing the Iran-Contra scandal was. I think because I'm in LA, I keep thinking about that. Some Hollywood person out there, you should option Jane Mayer's old book about the Iran-Contra scandal. It should be, anyway. But for all of the craziness of that scandal, and the indictments and the crazy cowboy adventuring of that scandal, and the miracle that Ronald Reagan did not get impeached for that scandal, the bullseye at the center of Iran-Contra is that it was just so blatantly and knowingly illegal. Right before the Iran-Contra scandal happened, right before the Reagan administration did what they did, Congress kind of knew what Reagan wanted to do, and they passed a law to stop him. Congress passed a law. There was an American law in effect and on the books, which said the Reagan administration can't give aid to the Contras in Nicaragua. And then the Reagan administration definitely gave aid to the Contras in Nicaragua, secretly, even though there was an explicit law prohibiting them from doing so. They sold missiles illegally to Iran to do it, to get the money that they were, I mean, this whole crazy thing. But the reason the Reagan administration ended up getting in so much trouble for Iran-Contra is because they just blatantly broke that law, which specifically said they couldn't do what they did. And the reason they broke that law, ultimately, is because of Ed Meese. Because Ed Meese, Ronald Reagan's Attorney General, very soberly concluded that when it comes to following the law, presidents don't really need to do that. Yes, there was an explicit law just passed by Congress that very clearly and unequivocally intended to stop the Reagan administration from doing this thing that everybody knew they wanted to do. When the Reagan administration went ahead and did it anyway, Ed Meese was like, I know there's a law, but if the president does it, it's not really illegal. Right? The laws don't actually apply to presidential behavior. You want to break the law, Mr. President? I got your back. That was his legal advice. That was the legal spine on which they built the whole Iran-Contra scheme, for which, again, I contend it is a miracle Reagan never got impeached. During that Iran-Contra scandal and the subsequent big investigation into it, a whole bunch of documents that Ed Meese was supposed to be securing and preserving for that investigation mysteriously ended up getting shredded by White House officials. The stuff that Meese was supposed to be making sure was retained, miraculously all that stuff ended up in the shredder. I mean, this is when he was serving as Attorney General of the United States. Ed Meese, also as Attorney General, came under scrutiny yet again from yet another independent counsel for a whole new raft of new corruption charges while he was serving as AG. That independent counsel was reported contemporaneously at the time to be investigating, quote, whether Meese violated the law in helping a New York defense firm obtain an Army contract, whether Meese violated the law in contacting officials on behalf of a friend who put together a $1 billion Mideast oil pipeline project, and whether Meese violated the law in participating in telephone regulation matters at a time he was trying to sell his own stock in phone companies. So he's under investigation for all of that alleged criminal behavior while he's serving as Attorney General. The first one that I mentioned there, the Army contract thing, that one ended up being a doozy. Meese's friend, who he helped hook up with that Army contract, and his own financial advisor, who he shared with that friend, and a bunch of other people, all ended up getting indicted and convicted and going to jail. And that scandal was called the WedTech scandal. Meese ultimately had to testify in some of those cases and was forced to admit from the stand that he had been way more involved in that scandal than he had publicly admitted to. But this, again, was while he was serving as Attorney General of the United States, all this stuff was happening. He's under investigation for all those criminal allegations. And because of that, under Ed Meese at the Justice Department, there was a sort of famous revolt at the Justice Department sort of executive level right underneath him. I mean, he's the Attorney General, the #1 official in the Justice Department. The #2 official in the Justice Department is the Deputy Attorney General, the job that Rod Rosenstein famously had early in the Trump administration. Well, under Ed Meese, his Deputy Attorney General resigned in protest of having to work under somebody like Ed Meese. Also, the head of the criminal division at the Justice Department resigned in protest at having to work under somebody like Ed Meese, right, who was under all of these multiple criminal investigations while still running the Justice Department himself. 4 other top officials resigned at the same time, along with those top Justice Department officials. All of those officials had actually conveyed a demand to the White House. They told White House Chief of Staff James Baker that Reagan needed to remove Ed Meese for the good of the country. Needed to get him out as Attorney General, get him out for the good of the country, to the Justice Department. If Reagan wouldn't do that, they said they would all resign in protest. Well, they all ended up resigning in protest because Reagan wouldn't remove Ed Meese. He still liked Ed Meese. He was his longtime friend. He wouldn't let him go. Ultimately, the only way they were able to pry Ed Meese out of the Justice Department was when that last independent counsel who was investigating him released his own sort of mammoth report on the corruption allegations against Meese. The day the independent counsel submitted his report on WedTech and the working on phone stuff when he was trying to sell his phone stocks and all those other allegations, it was only the day that independent counsel submitted his report on those corruption allegations against Ed Meese, that day was the day Meese finally resigned.
Life, where I intend to continue making...
Attorney General Edwin Meese today with a surprising announcement about his future.
I have informed the President
Why
I will be leaving the administration towards the end of July or early in August in order to accept new opportunities in the private sector.
NBC Nightly News with Tom Brokaw.
Good evening. Attorney General Edwin Meese's announcement that he will resign by the end of July or early August came shortly after the special prosecutor today filed a lengthy report. As NBC's James Polk reports tonight, even if Meese escapes prosecution, he leaves behind a record that has been criticized by Republican and Democrat alike.
When the special prosecutor's report was carried into the courthouse after a year-long investigation, Meese was on a drug-busting trip to California. Meese did not wait to read the report before telephoning the president to resign.
Ed Meese never ended up going to prison the way that Nixon's Attorney General John Mitchell did. But among all the attorneys general we have ever had in this country, he's really right up there. In terms of having one of the most scandal-ridden, ethically challenged tenures at the top of the Justice Department, up to and including the fact that he was the subject of multiple criminal investigations himself. And that last independent counsel ended up referring Meese's conduct to his own Justice Department for review and potential censure. And I mean, I know in some ways we kind of got it bad right now. I think it's helpful to look back on other times in U.S. history and remember that we have had it bad in some of the same ways at other times in our history too, and we figured out a way to make it through.
Aren't they all Republican?
So, like the Ed Meese story is good to remember. The John Mitchell story is good to remember when you look at this Justice Department under William Barr and you think about, you know, how bad it could get and how abused the Justice Department could be. Like, the Justice Department has been in pretty bad hands before, and there's been consequences for it, and it's worth keeping that in mind. And you know, in the Ed Meese case, it turns out to be particularly instructive for us today in 2019, in part because of where all of these folks who were involved in his scandal-ridden tenure in Washington, where they all ended up. I mentioned that during Meese's disastrous tenure as Attorney General, other senior officials resigned when the White House wouldn't remove Meese from his position. One of the very high-profile Justice Department guys who resigned, the guy who was the head of the criminal division of the Justice Department, who stepped down in protest against Meese's alleged corruption, his name was William Weld, Bill Weld. And well, today in 2019, he's running for president as a Republican primary challenger to President Trump. Where did Ed Meese himself end up? Well, Ed Meese is still around and kicking. Ed Meese himself today turned up at the White House, because President Trump today awarded him the Presidential Medal of Freedom, the highest award he can give. And if time is a circle, it's a circle in the form of a snake both biting on and choking on its own tail. because there is Ed Meese, literally the anti-pornography crusader, the guy who launched the obscenity strike force at the Justice Department and dedicated himself to eliminating the scourge of pornography from America. There's him today receiving his medal from the man you can see here in one of his several roles in Playboy features. This was the Playboy Films Centerfold feature, sort of a softcore number from the year 2000. He also appeared in Playboy movies in the year 2001, and even way back in 1994, which was sort of still within very reasonable memory of Attorney General Ed Meese launching his presidential commission on pornography and his obscenity strike force with which he intended to wipe out all pornography in America. Attorney General Ed Meese today appeared delighted to be receiving his medal today from the president, who has been identified as Individual 1 in a case that put his own lawyer in prison for breaking federal campaign finance laws in order to pay hush money to a very well-known porn star before the 2016 election at the direction of President Trump. Mr. Obscenity Strike Force Meese, as I said today, just appeared to be happy to be getting his medal. And at this event today with President Trump, he did go out of his way to give a shout out specifically to President Trump's current Attorney General, who will likely be on the same page of the history books about a certain type of Attorney General in the annals of the U.S. Justice Department.
You have risen to continue the string of great attorneys general in this country, and I certainly appreciate what you're doing now. I must say, from my own experience, I understand what you're going through now.
Hats off to you, Bill Barr. I know where you're at. I've been there. You know, I didn't get indicted in the end. Take heart. And now look, you guys are giving me a medal. So this was just another remarkable day in the news. I mean, Ed Meese is at the White House getting his medal, while simultaneously, this White House was sending a letter to Congress insisting that as far as they're concerned, this whole impeachment thing isn't really happening. Pat Cipollone today, not so much a legal argument from the White House counsel as a political argument about how presidents don't really need to pay any attention to impeachments. It's a very Meesian argument about laws and other forms of accountability just not applying to presidents. I don't know if they timed this specifically to happen on the day when Ed Meese was in the House, right? Ed Meese, who claimed that presidents don't need to follow laws and their attorneys general don't need to preserve documents even when they're part of ongoing federal investigations. But this letter appearing while Ed Meese was in the White House getting a medal seemed particularly apt. When we all woke up this morning and checked the news, we learned that last night after midnight, the State Department had contacted Gordon Sondland, U.S. ambassador to the EU, who had been expected to appear before the impeachment committees today for a deposition. Sondland's attorney said that although he had intended to give his deposition and hand over documents, and he'd flown to Washington specially for that purpose, the State Department in that 12:30 a.m. phone call intervened and told him not to show up today. CNN later reporting that it was actually the White House counsel's office that decided that Ambassador Sondland would not be allowed to testify today. The president then online today took credit himself for blocking Sondland from testifying, which might not have been wise, given that the thing he's blocking Sondland from testifying in is his own impeachment proceedings. Today we also learned that the whistleblower from the intelligence community, who basically pulled the fire alarm to alert Congress and the country as to what was happening here, the whistleblower whose initial account of President Trump getting on the phone with the president of Ukraine asking for help against a Democratic opponent in the